stop. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadameyam Dadati Swapadantakam Vandeham Shri Guru Shivatapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadhvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishakhan Vitamascha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shabbat ki Jai. Jai. Thank you, dear devotees, for joining. Hare Krishna all. Hare Krishna Vijayanti Mataji. Vijayanti Mataji, Sri Mataji. Jai. Okay, so I know the devotees at the start of the call were sharing that there are 2 chapters that have been missed. So I know Prasunda Prabhu is also traveling to the UK, I believe next week. But yeah, we need to, between Sadhbrim Prabhu, myself, and Prasunda Prabhu, would need to discuss about how, like, just bringing it back on track. It's just that I know Sadhbrim Prabhu is starting a few other things also. So his schedule is a bit tight, and then mine also for the next couple of weeks, I'll be out as well. So I won't be able to do this session in 2 weeks' time, which is why we kind of just rearranged. So yeah, we'll discuss and then hopefully we can bring it back on track. But yeah, apologies for that in advance. I know it's not nice to leave Prahlad Maharaj in the hands of Hiranyakashipu, but what to do, you know? Prahlad Maharaj has tolerated so much, and yeah, unfortunately, we as devotees are meant to try and release him from his torture, but look at what us three are doing. But yeah, so I shall share my screen. And yeah, if we have volunteers to read, please do put your hands up. Sir Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Overview of chapter 9.4. Ambarīṣa Mahārāja Offended by Durvāsā Muni. Shukdev Goswami said, the son of Nabhaga named Nabhaga lived for a long time at the place of his spiritual master. Therefore, his brothers thought that he was not going to become a grihastha and would not return. Consequently, without providing a share for him, they divided the property of their father among themselves. When Nabhaga returned from the place of his spiritual master, they gave him their father as his share. Nabhaga inquired, my dear brothers, what have you given to me as my share of our father's property? His elder brothers answered, we have kept our father as your share. But when Nabhaga went to his father and said, my dear father, my elder brothers have given you as my share of property, the father replied, my dear son, do not rely upon their cheating words. I am not your property. Nabhaga's father said, all the descendants of Angira are now going to perform a great sacrifice. But although they are very intelligent, on every 6th day, they will be bewildered in performing sacrifice and will make mistakes in their daily duties. Nabhaga's father continued, go to those great souls and describe 2 Vedic hymns pertaining to Vaisvadeva. And when the great sages have completed the sacrifice and are going to the heavenly planets, they will give you the remnants of the money they have received from the sacrifice. Therefore, go there immediately. Thus, Nabhaga acted exactly according to the advice of his father, and the great sages of the Angira dynasty gave him all their wealth, and then went to the heavenly planets.
Thank you.
Should
Amy
I
Mataji?
continue? Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thereafter, while Nabhaga was accepting the riches, a black-looking person from the north came to him and said, "All the wealth from this sacrificial arena belongs to me." Nabhaga then said, "These riches belong to me. The great saintly persons have delivered them to me." When Nabhaga said this, the black-looking person replied, "Let us go to your father and ask him to settle our disagreement." In accordance with this, Nabhaga inquired from his father. The father of Nabhaga said, "Whatever the great sages sacrificed in the arena of the Daksha Yajna, they offered to Lord Shiva as his share. Therefore, everything in this sacrificial arena certainly belongs to Lord Shiva." Thereupon, after offering obeisances to Lord Shiva, Nabhaga said, "O worshipable Lord, everything in this arena of sacrifice is yours. This is the assertion of my father. Now, with great respect, I bow my head before you, begging your mercy." Lord Shiva said, "Whatever your father has said is the truth, and you also are speaking the same truth. Therefore, I who know the Vedic mantras, will explain transcendental knowledge to you." Lord Shiva said, "Now you may take all the wealth remaining from the sacrifice, for I give it to you." After saying this, Lord Shiva, who is most adherent to the religious principles, disappeared, saying this. Lord Shiva disappeared from that place. If one hears and chants or remembers this narration in the morning and evening with great attention, he certainly becomes learned, experienced in understanding the Vedic hymns, and expert in self-realization. From Nabhaga, Maharaj Ambarīṣa took birth. Maharaj Ambarīṣa was an exalted devotee, celebrated for his great merits. Although he was cursed for an infallible Brahmana, the curse could not touch him. Can you move it up, Prabhu, please? King Parikshit inquired, "O great personality, Maharaj Ambarīṣa was certainly most exalted and meritorious in character. I wish to hear about him. How surprising it is that the curse of a Brahmana, which is insurmountable, could not act upon him." Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Rachna Mataji?
Hare Krishna. Sukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Ambarīṣa, the most fortunate personality, achieved the rule of the entire world, consisting of 7 islands, and achieved inexhaustible, unlimited opulence and prosperity on earth. Although such a position is rarely obtained, Maharaj Ambarīṣa did not care for it at all, for he knew very well that all such opulence is material. Like that which is imagined in a dream, such opulence will ultimately be destroyed. The king knew that any non-devotee who attains such opulence merges increasingly into material nature's mode of darkness. Maharaj Ambarīṣa was a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, and of the saintly persons who are the Lord's devotees. Because of his devotion, he thought of the entire universe as being as insignificant as a piece of stone. Maharaj Ambarīṣa always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, his words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to the Lord, and he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambarīṣa never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and to be completely free from all material desires. In performing his prescribed duties as king, Maharaj Ambarīṣa always offered the results of his royal activities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is the enjoyer of everything and is beyond the perception of material senses. He certainly took advice from Brahmanas who were faithful devotees of the Lord, and thus he ruled the planet Earth without difficulty. In desert countries where there flowed the river Saraswati, Maharaj Ambarish performed great sacrifices like the Ashwamedha Yajna, and thus satisfied the master of all yajnas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such sacrifices were performed with great opulence and suitable paraphernalia, and with contributions of dakshina to the Brahmanas, who were supervised by, who were supervised by great personalities like Vashishta, Asita, and Gautama, representing the king, the performer of the sacrifices. In the Do
you want somebody else to take over, Mataji? Anybody else?
Yeah, no, I'll just finish. In the sacrifice arranged by Maharaj Ambarish, the members of the assembly and the priests, especially Hota, Udgata, Brahma, and Advaryu, were gorgeously dressed, and they all looked exactly like demigods. They eagerly saw to the proper performance of the yajna. The citizens of the state of Maharaj Ambarish were accustomed to chanting and hearing about the glorious activities of the personality of Godhead. Thus, they never aspired to be elevated to the heavenly planets, which are extremely dear even to the demigods. Those who are saturated with the transcendental happiness of rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead are uninterested even in the achievements of great mystics, for such achievements do not enhance the transcendental bliss felt by a devotee who always thinks of Krishna within the core of his heart. The king of this planet, Maharaj Ambarish, thus performed devotional service to the Lord, and in this endeavor practiced severe austerity, always satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his constitutional activities. He gradually gave up all material desires. Maharaj Ambarish gave up all attachment to household affairs, wives, children, friends, and relatives, to the best of powerful elephants, to beautiful chariots, carts, horses, and inexhaustible jewels, and to ornaments, garments, and an inexhaustible treasury. He gave up attachment to all of them, regarding them as temporary and material. Being very pleased by the unalloyed devotion of Maharaj Ambarish, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gave the king his disc, which is fearful to enemies, and which always protects the devotee from enemies and adversities. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anybody else like to read?
Hare Krishna, Dhanapram.
Hare Krishna. So, Shri Prabhu? Sorry, one second.
Shall I go ahead, Tuji?
Yes. Yep.
Hare Krishna. To worship Lord Krishna, Maharaja Ambarisha, along with his queen, who was equally qualified, observed the vow of Ekadashi and Dwadashi for 1 year. In the month of Kartika, after observing that vow for 1 year, after observing a fast for 3 nights, and after bathing in the Yamuna, Maharaja Ambarisha worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, in Madhuvana. Following the regulative principles of Mahabhisheka, Maharaja Ambarisha performed the bathing ceremony for the deity of Krishna, of Lord Krishna, with all paraphernalia. And then he dressed the deity with fine clothing, ornaments, fragrant flower garlands, and other paraphernalia for worship of the deity, of the Lord, With attention and devotion, he worshipped Krishna and all the greatly fortunate Brahmanas who were free from material desires. Thereafter, Maharaja Ambarisha satisfied all the guests who arrived at his house, especially the Brahmanas. He gave in charity 60 crores of cows, whose horns were covered with gold plate and whose hooves were covered with silver plate. All the cows were well decorated with garments and had full milk bags. They were mild-natured, young and beautiful, and were accompanied by their calves. After giving these cows, the king first sumptuously fed all the Brahmanas. And when they were fully satisfied, he was about to observe the end of Ekadashi with their permission by breaking the fast. Exactly at that time, however, Durvāsā Muni, the great and powerful mystic, appeared on the scene as an uninvited guest. Shall I continue, Prabhu? Thank you.
Seema Mataji, would you like to continue?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. After standing up to receive Durvāsā Muni, King Ambarīṣa offered him a seat and paraphernalia of worship. Then sitting at his feet, the king requested the great sage to eat. Durvāsā Muni gladly accepted the request of Maharaja Ambarīṣa, but to perform the regulative ritualistic ceremonies, he went to the river Yamuna. There he dipped into the water of the auspicious Yamuna and meditated upon the impersonal Brahman. In the meantime, only a muhurta of the Dwadashi day was left on which to break the fast. Consequently, it was imperative that the fast be broken immediately. In this dangerous situation, the king consulted learned Brahmanas. The king said to transgress the laws of respectful behavior towards the Brahmanas is certainly a great offense. On the other hand, if one does not observe the breaking of the fast within the time of Dwadashi, there is a flaw in one's observance of the vow. Therefore, O Brahmanas, if you think that it will be auspicious and not irreligious, I shall break the fast by drinking water. In this way, after consulting with the Brahmanas, the king reached this decision, for according to Brahmanical opinion, drinking water may be accepted as eating and also not eating. O best of the Kuru dynasty, after he drank some water, King Ambarīṣa, meditating upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, waited for the return of the great mystic Durvāsā Muni. After executing the ritualistic ceremonies to be performed at noon, Durvāsā returned from the bank of the Yamuna. The king received him well, offering all respect, but Durvāsā Muni, by his mystic power, could understand that King Ambarīṣa has drunk water without his permission. Still hungry, Durvāsā Muni, his body trembling, his face curved, and his eyebrows crooked in a frown, angrily spoke as follows to King Ambarīṣa, who stood before him with folded hands. I'll just see the behavior of this cruel man. He is not a devotee of Lord Vishnu. Being proud of his material opulence and his position, he considered himself God. Just see how he transgressed the law of religion. Maharaja Ambarīṣa, you have invited me to eat as a guest, but instead of feeding me, you yourself have eaten first. Because of your misbehavior, I shall show you something to punish you. As Durvāsā Muni said this, his face became red with anger. Uprooting a bunch of hair from his head, he created a demon resembling the blazing fire of devastation to punish Maharaja Ambarīṣa, taking a trident in his hand and making the surface of the earth tremble with his footsteps. That blazing creature came before Maharaja Ambarīṣa, but the king, upon seeing him, was not at all disturbed and did not move even slightly from his position. As fire in the forest immediately burns to ashes an angry snake, so by the previous order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, immediately burned to ashes the created demon to protect the Lord's devotee. Upon seeing that his own attempt had failed and that the Sudarshan Chakra was moving towards him, Durvāsā Muni became very frightened and began to run in all directions to save his life. As the blazing flame of a forest fire pursued a snake, the disc of the Supreme Personality of Godhead began following Durvāsā Muni. Durvāsā Muni saw that the disc was almost touching his back, and thus he ran very swiftly, desiring to enter a cave of Sumeru mountain just to protect himself. Durvāsā Muni fled everywhere in all directions, the sky, on the surface of the earth, in caves, in the ocean, on different planets of the ruler of 3 worlds, and even on the heavenly planets. But wherever he went, he immediately saw following him the unbearable fire of the Sudarshan Chakra. With a fearful heart, Durvāsā Muni went here and there seeking shelter, but when he couldn't find no shelter, he finally approached Lord Brahma and said, "O my Lord, O Lord Brahma, kindly protect me from the blazing Sudarshan Chakra sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead."
Thank you. Anybody else like to read? It's quite a bit left, actually. We can't hear you, Vijayanti Mataji, if you speak.
Okay, I know. My mic is messed up, so let somebody else.
We can hear now. We can hear now, but it's a bit distant.
Hare Krishna. Lord Brahma said at the end of Dviparata, when the pastimes of the Lord came to an end, Lord Vishnu, by a flick of his eyebrows, vanquished the entire universe, including our places of residence. Such personalities as me and Lord Shiva, as well as Daksha, Bhrigu, and similar great saints, of which they are the head, and also rulers of the living entities, the rulers of human society and rulers of the demigods, all of us surrendered to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, bowing our heads to carry out his orders for the benefit of all living entities. When Durvāsā, who was greatly afflicted by the blazing fire of the Sudarshana Chakra, was thus refused by Lord Brahma, he tried to take shelter of Lord Shiva, who always resides on his planet known as Kailasha. Lord Shiva said, "My dear son, I, Lord Brahma, and other demigods who rotate within this universe under my misconception of our greatness cannot exhibit any power to compete with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But innumerable universes and their inhabitants come into existence and are annihilated by the simple direction of the Lord. Past, present, and future are known to me, Lord Shiva. Sanat Kumara, Narada, the most revered Brahma, Kapila, son of Devahuti, Apantaratama, Lord Vyasadeva, Devala, Yamaraja, Asuri, Marichi, and many saintly persons headed by him, as well as many others who have achieved perfection. Nonetheless, because we are covered by the illusory energy of the Lord, we cannot understand how expansive that illusory energy is. You should simply approach that Supreme Personality of Godhead to get relief. For this, Sudarshana Chakra is intolerable even to us. Go to Lord Vishnu. He will certainly be kind enough to bestow all good fortune upon you. Therefore, being disappointed even in taking shelter of Lord Shiva, Durvāsā Muni went to Vaikuntha Dhama, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, resides with his consort, the goddess of fortune. Durvāsā Muni, the great mystic, scorched by the heat of Sudarshana Chakra, fell at the lotus feet of Narayana. His body trembling, he spoke as follows: "O infallible, unlimited Lord, protector of the entire universe, you are the only desirable objective for all devotees. I am a great offender of my Lord. Please give me protection. O my Lord, O Supreme Controller, without knowledge of your unlimited prowess, I have offended your most dear devotee. Very kindly save me from the reaction of this offense. You can do everything, for even a person is going to hell. You can deliver him simply by awakening his inner heart to the holy name of your Lordship."
Thank you. Dina Pavan Krishna Prabhu, are you there?
Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam Prabhu. Would you like to read?
I joined to take your blissful darshan. I'm going for another meeting because a long night I saw you. I'll join again after some time, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay,
Hare Krishna. Would anybody else like to read?
I can read.
Sure, Sima.
Sure. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahmana, "I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires. I sit only within the course of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee? Even those who are devotees of my devotees are very dear to me. O best of the Brahmanas, without saintly persons for whom I am the only destination, I do not desire to enjoy my transcendental bliss and my supreme opulences, since pure devotees give up their homes, wives, children, relatives, riches, and even their lives simply to serve me, without any desire for material improvement in this life or in the next. How can I give up such devotees at any time? As chaste women bring their gentle husbands under control by service, the pure devotees who are equal to everyone and completely attached to me in the core of the heart bring me under their full control. My devotees who are always satisfied to be engaged in my loving service are not interested even in the four principles of liberation: Salokya, Sarupya, Samipya, and Sarishti. although these are automatically achieved by their service. What then is to be said of such perishable happiness as elevation to the higher planetary systems? The pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I don't know anyone else but them. O Brahmana, let me now advise you for your own protection. Please hear from me. By offending Maharaja Ambarīṣa, you have acted with self-envy. Therefore, you should go to him immediately without a moment's delay. One's so-called powers, when employed against the devotee, certainly harms he who employs it. Thus, it is the subject, not the object, who is harmed. For a Brahmana, austerity and learning are certainly auspicious, but when acquired by a person who is not gentle, such austerity and learning are most dangerous. O best of the Brahmanas, you should therefore go immediately to King Ambarīṣa, the son of Maharaja Nabhaga. I wish you all good fortune. If you can satisfy Maharaja Ambarīṣa, then there will be peace for you. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, this week I think that seventh canto, 10th chapter, Prahlada, the best among exalted devotees, right?
Jay, yes. So I was mentioning with a couple of the devotees earlier. So there's 2 chapters, I think, which are missing from what the devotees are saying. And Bharsundar Prabhu, Satprem Prabhu, myself just need to sync up to understand how we're going to go about it. Because the situation was that obviously Bharsundar Prabhu was giving those classes, but then because of internet issues and stuff, electricity, etc., he couldn't. But Satprem Prabhu and myself have certain like commitments on other dates. So that's why we basically pulled this one forward, just to keep to the date that we could have. But then, yeah, we need to rearrange because at least for the next couple of weeks, I wouldn't have been able to do this class. But yeah, Jay, apologies in advance to all the devotees because I know it's not, the whole idea was to systematically study the Bhagavatam, right? But unfortunately, you're stuck with me now with Ambarīṣa Mahārāja and Ambarīṣa Mahārāja's situation. So yeah, hopefully you can tolerate me, but join in with Ambarīṣa Mahārāja's pleasure against the Durvāsā Muni.
Prabhu, you are as old as my child, but I love you and learning so much from you already.
And we have a Nirjala Ekadashi also, no, Prabhu, for this Wednesday. So it will be good.
It's Wednesday in India as well?
Yes. Wednesday.
Yes, Wednesday for the UK as well.
In the USA, it's Tuesday.
Yes, Nirjala Ekadashi is coming up. So now we know Maharaja Ambarīṣa's standard of Ekadashi, so we can try to live up to that standard, right? So talk about it. So just out of interest, how many practice Ekadashi if you're open to sharing? If you just put your hands up or something. Okay. Most of the devotees then. Oh, nice. Almost everyone, I think. Jay, so this is a very relevant chapter for all of us. His Maharaj Ambarīṣa and his Ekadashi adventures. Just, I guess, when we finish for the call, when you wind down for the day, just pray that Durvāsā Muni doesn't turn up at your house, And so that's when you're trying to ram for the food, to break your fast. So, okay. So, as you all know, I like to test every devotee on the call. At the start of the chapter, we hear about a personality called Nabhaga and his son Nabhaga, right? But why is Shukadeva Goswami switching it up now? Like, because I don't know if you've been through the previous chapters yet, but in the previous chapter, he talks about Shukanya and Javana Muni. But now all of a sudden he's changed the personalities that he's talking about. So where does Nabhaga and Nabhaga, or one of them at least, get referenced in previous cantos or chapters? Does anybody know? Any guess? So during the Rachana Mataji?
Yeah, it says the son of Manu. So Nabhag is the son of Manu. So, like Manu's, children have been throughout the cantos been mentioned, the Devahuti and Uttanapad and Priyavrata and all these. So
Exactly. So what Shukadeva Goswami is doing is he's outlined the Manus at the start, and then he's going one by one with the lineage of the Manus. So in the previous chapter, he spoke about Javana Muni and forgot name now. Sharan.
Sukanya.
Exactly.
Sukanya.
Sukanya, that's it. Thank you. Right. So that's what they were talking about. And Sukanya is actually the granddaughter of Shadadev Manu. Right. So Shukadeva Goswami wound down with one part of the lineage, and now he's going on to another son of Manu. So that way, you see throughout the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, that's what Shukadeva Goswami is actually doing. So when he goes through pastimes, like after this, the next section is about Lord Ram. So he doesn't just come to Lord Ram. He comes to Lord Ram based on the Manus that he's speaking about, based on the lineage that he's speaking about. So all the order of the Bhagavatam is based on that. So it's not by chance that Prahlad Maharaj gets mentioned in Canto 7. It's not by chance that Ramchandra gets mentioned in Canto 7. Canto 9. It's not by chance that Krishna gets mentioned in Canto 10. It's happening, as Rashmi Mataji mentioned, seminal succession, right? So that's what Shukadeva Goswami is doing. And so here at the start of the chapter, we hear about how Nabhaga, he spent his time in the Guru's ashram, and we understand that that was the history of what used to happen. One second. So that we hear about Nabhaga and how he spent time in Guru's ashram. We know historically that's what used to happen, right? Where the children would go to a Guru's ashram, spend time there from a very young age. They wouldn't stay with their parents from 5 till about 25. And then they'd come out of the ashram. And so if they come out, then what would happen? They'd get married, they'd have kids, right? They'd basically get married and have kids and require wealth, home, etc., etc. But he didn't come out. He didn't come out when he was meant to come out of the ashram. And so his brothers thought, okay, well, he's not come out. Maybe he's chosen to become a Naishthik brahmachari, a brahmachari for life. And so what did they do? They basically thought, okay, he's not coming out, so let's just distribute our father's share among ourselves. Natural, right? If there's a son or a child that doesn't want anything because they've renounced everything, then everybody else splits it. But then they find out that, hang on, Nabhaga's coming back. And now what would happen? What should happen? Right? What should happen in that situation? Anybody?
They would have to give him some share.
Everybody, they should give him some share. So, I mean, if it was a fair world, what would happen, right? All the sons would come together, or the brothers would come together and go, okay, I know we've taken all this, but let's put it back into the pile and then split it again. But what did they decide to do? They decided, we're going to give our father to Nabhaga as his share of the property. Now we can understand from this how corrupt they were, right? Because just think, here's the father of all these brothers, all these sons. And what does a father do? Looks after the children, helps them grow up, feeds them, gives so much love, care, affection to them. And instead of splitting that service of looking after the father, they went, Nabhaga, you look after the father. Right? Now, I think many of the devotees on the call here have children of your own. Imagine if you got treated like that, where, in your old age, you've given out all your shares, you've kind of wrote your will, you've given all your children everything. And now...
Prabhuji, now we have many Nabhagas like this in this present situation.
That's true. That is true. That is true. But imagine how you would feel as the parent, right? You'd also feel pretty bad. It's not just about the fact that you've got corrupt children. It's the fact that you yourself would feel, you'd feel like you're a property now, right? Instead of with all the love, care, affection you've given your children, now you're a property for them. Dispose of you when you're not useful, keep you until you keep paying them. But once all the Lakshmi's gone, you're just a property.
Liability, Prabhu.
A liability, yeah. I think Mataji is speaking from experience. Sorry, bad joke. But no, right? We see this, and yeah, as Lakshmi Narayan Prabhu was mentioning, we see this today a lot actually. Old age centers. I mean, I don't know how it is in India, but at least in the West, old age centers are pretty bad. You know, it really is that okay. The children see the parent as a liability, and so they don't want to look after them even for a moment. They'll go visit every now and then, but more so to show face than anything. You know, not everybody's like that, but it happens. But here's innocent Nabhaga. He was ready to accept it because, I mean, that's what he was given, right? So I mean, you could see how staunch he was as a brahmachari because he really imbibed the mood of humility. But his father understood the crookedness of his brothers. And so he was like, okay, Nabhaga, you've come out of the ashram, you're going to need some wealth. So I can't give you wealth because your brothers have taken all the wealth, but I'll give you a way on how you can attain wealth. So he gave a way by helping out some brahmanas, basically, right? A group of sages who were performing sacrifice, performing some yagnas. And so what happened is Nabhaga then decided, yes, you know, I'll follow what my father has told me perfectly. And he did that. He went to the group, to the sages, and spoke exactly how his father told him to speak. And being pleased, what did the sages do? Just before ascending to the spiritual, to the heavenly planets, actually, not the spiritual, to the heavenly planets, the sages decided, okay, this Nabhaga has helped us so much. And they bestowed him with all the wealth that they had acquired, out of the kindness, out of the gratitude of, you know, you've helped us attain the heavenly kingdom. And when Nabhaga's just about to take all the riches, all the wealth and go back, who comes onto the scene? Lord Shiva. The black person is Lord Shiva. Now we know Shiva as this renunciate who lives under a tree, two-piece cloth, if not one. Renounced, completely renounced. And here he is turning up to take the riches from Nabhaga. Right? Because what does he say? He goes, actually, everything that all these sages have given you is actually mine. It belongs to me. And Nabhaga goes, hang on a second, but the sages gave it to me, so how is it yours? Now, what would we do in this situation? We'd just keep fighting, right? We'd go, no, it's mine, no, it's mine, you know? Each party will do that. I mean, since we're on the topic of children and we've already got devotees sharing about how we've got corrupt children in the world, like just imagine two brothers, right? If they're after the parents' property or bank balance or whatever it is, constant fight, no end. That disagreement just never ends. Well, somebody's always going to be upset, and if they have the power, they will always fight back. But here, Nabhaga and Shiva actually show us how we should reconcile these disagreements. Because what do? They go to Nabhaga's father. They go to a senior authority that both parties consider respectfully. And what did Nabhaga's father say? The father said that actually Shiva's right. All the sacrifices go to Shiva because ultimately he's the beneficiary, especially off the back of Daksha's yagna. Shiva's the beneficiary. And then what Nabhaga does is a lesson for all of us, actually, because without any attachment, he just gave the wealth over. He was like, with respect, with honor, Shiva, you know, father said this belongs to you. And it said that he even offered his pranams, his obeisances to Shiva. And then he says also, Brahman chirasatvam prasadaye. O Brahmana, I bow my head before you and beg for your mercy. Now let's reflect again. If we were in that situation where we're having a clash with our brother, our sister, about a piece of property, about some land, about something our parents have given, right, or belongs to our parents, or anybody from that matter, maybe you entered business with your brother or sister or something. And then you go to a senior authority because you can't reconcile, and you go, look, this is a situation, you know. My brother, he's trying to take over what belongs to me. And your brother's like, he's trying to do the same to me. And then the senior authority tells you, actually, your brother, your sister, actually, it belongs to them. How would we react? To start off with, we still wouldn't agree, right? We'd refuse to accept the authority. We'd be like, I know you're saying this, but no, I know it's mine. You're misunderstanding. You don't know the reality. And maybe because we're good, pious people, we'll be like, okay, fine, you know, the authority said it, fine, I'll give it to you. But we do it grudgingly, right? In our heart, we're thinking, so much money came to me and I just lost it in a second. Why? Because that person took it all from me. But here's Nabhaga who didn't just hand the wealth over to Shiva. He actually paid his obeisances and begged for Shiva's mercy. Complete clean by heart. Had no attachment, no desire. He was ready to take the wealth because his father was telling him that you need to take the wealth. But once his father told him, actually the wealth doesn't belong to you. I mean, didn't the father know beforehand that actually all the wealth that the sages had would have belonged to Shiva? He would have known. And seeing this honesty, seeing this sincerity, Shiva became pleased with Nabhaga. And so what did Shiva do? Shiva said, you take the wealth. And with it, I'm going to give you transcendental knowledge. That's going to be eternally beneficial. Right? Now, unfortunately, if we try to do that in this day and age, just being honest, that wouldn't happen, yeah? So if you're taking this pastime as going, okay, you know, my brother's like Lord Shiva, you know, he'll give me the wealth back, that won't necessarily happen. But what we can learn from this is the mood that Nabhaga had, which was detachment from the wealth. That mood was the humility that the authority has said something, his father has said something, and therefore I earnestly follow it because ultimately that is what is good for me. The wealth came to me, but maybe it wasn't meant for me. Instead of constantly fighting for stuff that we want, let us just accept that, okay, maybe it is not actually mine. I mean, ultimately everything belongs to Krishna. Ultimately every sacrifice belongs to Shiva. So that mood we can develop. And then with this handover of transcendental knowledge from Shiva, we come to one of the main personalities of the pastime, which is Nabhaga's son, Mahārāja Ambarīṣa. And when Shukdev Goswami starts sharing a brief snippet of Mahārāja Ambarīṣa, we hear and see that Parikshit Maharaj is very interested in hearing about Mahārāja Ambarīṣa. And why is that? Because he's a great personality who was so great that even a Brahmana's curse wasn't affecting him. When we go around Tulsi Maharani, we actually say that just by circumambulating Tulsi Maharani, the crime or the sin of killing a Brahmana can be reduced, can be vanquished. So naturally, Parikshit Maharaj, being a devotee, being interested in hearing about the glories of the Lord and glories of the devotees, he wanted to hear because he was interested, like, who is this great personality? I've heard about him, but what actually happened? And Parikshit Maharaj in one way is showing us the mood on how to approach the Bhagavatam. Oftentimes, we can approach the Bhagavatam, and actually, if you get to the end of Canto 9, this especially happens. You're going through so many different personalities in the Bhagavatam. Like there are certain verses, certain chapters that do this, where it's just constant. Like, okay, there's this personality, then he had this son, this many children, this son had this wife, these two had these children. And like they say, it goes through many chapters. Like the end of Canto 9 is very, very much famous for this also. Yeah, Canto 9 is crazy on this, right? And we can go through it and think, I just want to get to Canto 10 now, Krishna's pastime. I just want to get to it. But actually, Parikshit Maharaj is showing us that just by hearing about the devotees, just by hearing the name of the devotees, our heart should jump in ecstasy about wanting to hear about them. And if we think about it, the lineage of Krishna, the lineage of Ramachandra, the lineage of Vyasadeva, etc., how great a devotee must all those personalities have been to have the Lord themselves manifest in the dynasty. So when we approach the Bhagavatam, we can approach the Bhagavatam going, okay, Canto 9, 30 verses on just names of a lineage that I have no idea who they are. Or we can approach the Bhagavatam and think, okay, it's a struggle. Speaking at least for myself when going through the names, it's a struggle. But you know what? Just by saying these personalities' names, just by reading the names of these personalities, by trying to understand who they are, how they connect with Krishna, with the Lord, how they connect as devotees, that can purify us. That can inspire our own bhakti. And that's how we should approach the Bhagavatam, that everything in the Bhagavatam is for our benefit, to connect with Krishna and to connect with Krishna's devotees. And so all of it is of interest to us, not just Canto 10, not just Canto 7 because of Prahlad Maharaj and Nrsimhadev, not just Canto 9 because of Ramchandra, but actually even those verses where we're thinking, why did Shukadev Goswami even say anything like this? Like, why is he talking about this here? Even those verses should be of interest and inspire us and purify us. So then Shukadev Goswami starts talking about Maharaj Ambarīṣa, right? Because, I mean, that's how their relationship is between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadev Goswami. Shukadev Goswami hints at something. Parikshit Maharaj is then like, I caught you. You said about this personality. Now you have to tell me. Like, you can't hide it anymore. So then Shukadev Goswami is like, okay, you caught me. Now I have to speak about it. So what does Shukadev Goswami say? So he starts off the pastime of Maharaj Ambarīṣa by talking about how opulent his material opulence was, how much material opulence Maharaj Ambarīṣa had. Now, Maharaj Ambarīṣa wasn't a small timer, right? He didn't have a penthouse in Manhattan. He didn't have like a villa in Europe. He didn't have, what is it, the Antilia? Is that the thing? Of the tower in India? Right? He didn't have any of that.
Yes, the Ambanis, yeah.
Yeah, the Ambanis. Is it called Antilia? Antilia? Antilla?
Something like that.
Okay. He didn't have any of that, right? But for him, those were small timers. Because for Maharaj Ambarīṣa, what he had was he had rule over the entire world of all the 7 islands. He had unlimited wealth and opulence. Imagine somebody who owned the whole earth. That was Maharaj Ambarīṣa's material opulence. Now, I mean, who's the greatest personality we have on earth present, whoever the president of USA probably is, right? Or maybe like Elon Musk or somebody, like I don't know who's the wealthiest right now. But how much do they own, A couple of penthouses, probably a couple of big towers in a country. And even the president of the United States, I mean, maximum 1 island, and even then it's like half the people don't even want him or her. But his Maharaj Ambarīṣa, he owned the entire earth. That's how much material opulence he had. And just imagine, like, we're struggling with trying to get a 3-bed apartment in a city sometimes, right? But despite all of that wealth Maharaj Ambarīṣa had, what does he say? Or what does Shukadev Goswami say about him, rather? He says, Vidvan Vibhava Nirvanam. Maharaj Ambarīṣa completely understood that all this wealth will ultimately be destroyed. Maharaj Ambarīṣa knew, I have all of this what's the use of it? It's going to go away anyway. He didn't care for it. Because as a devotee, he understood that his wealth was actually his Krishna consciousness. It's described, I can't remember who was reading it, but it's described that Maharaj Ambarīṣa considered the whole universe to be as insignificant as stone. Now, let's think about this, yeah? If we're walking down the street, down the gully or whatever, and we see a stone on the street, what are we going to do? We're just going to keep walking. We're not going to think about it at all. But imagine now we're walking down the street and somebody's got 1,000 rupee note or $100 bill or £100 bill, actually £50 bill. What's going to happen? We're going to look at it, right? Like, at least I speak for myself. Then I'll look around, and if somebody's there, I'm like, okay, just keep walking, pretend you saw nothing. But if nobody's around, then okay, let me pick it up. Krishna sent this $100 bill for me, $100 bill for me. I needed $100, so Krishna sent it to me. He's put it on the floor for me to pick up. It's mine anyway. Finders keepers, losers weepers. It's a saying in UK that we have. I don't know if you have one in India. But yeah, like that, we might have that mentality, right? Or at least, even if we don't, because as devotees, we're trying to cultivate piety, it's not our wealth. Maybe we'll pick it up and give it to its rightful owner, put it in a temple or something. But deep down, if we aren't free of that desire for wealth, then naturally there is a part that goes, okay, can I use it? But imagine if you could see that wealth as stone. Just as you walk past and see stones on the street and you just don't think about it. Imagine if that $1,000 bill was just like that for you. Now imagine the whole universe like that. Imagine your mood was like that for the whole universe. And that was Maharaj Ambarīṣa. Where he didn't care at all. Like, he could see that there was opulence here, there was wealth here, there was riches here, gold here. Just walked on. Didn't even think about it. And then in verses 18 to 20 of this chapter, we get a very beautiful description of Maharaj Ambarīṣa and his exalted devotion, actually, how he engaged himself. I'll read the translation because, it's quite long, actually. It's a quote. Maharaj Ambarīṣa always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, his words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to the Lord. And he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord. His head in bowing down before the Lord. And all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambarīṣa never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service. In various engagements related to the Lord, this is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. In the Nectar Devotional Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's a nice verse which is quoted, which is Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Right? I believe it's from 112, I think. And what does that mean? It means that bhakti or devotional service actually means engaging all of our senses in the service of who? In the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of the senses. And we can see from these verses 18 to 20, how Maharaj Ambarīṣa fulfilled that with every limb of his body. Every sense he had was engaged in the Lord's service. his entire existence was attributed to serving the Lord. Now when we're performing services, many times we will do a lot of these activities, right? We'll bow down to the deities, we'll use our feet to go to the temple, and do so many other things, hearing Krishna Katha right now, speaking Krishna Katha. But have we developed that mood that everything, not a moment should be wasted without it being something being utilized in service of the Lord? When we walk, we also walk to the cinema. When we walk, we also go to the park. We also go to the restaurant. But here's Maharaj Ambarīṣa. His feet were purely used to walk to that place where he could serve the Lord. When we speak, we also speak so much prajalpa, so much useless conversation we have, whether at work, at home, with friends, on the phone. But when Maharaj Ambarīṣa speaks, he spoke purely to spread Krishna's glory. Everything Maharaj Ambarīṣa did was for the pleasure of the Lord. He never did anything whimsical, but he always followed Guru Sadhu Shastra. And we see that because throughout this chapter, actually, we'll see even later on how he takes shelter of the Brahmanas, the Vaishnava Brahmanas. But even here, it's mentioned, like, whilst Shukdev Goswami is describing Maharaj Ambarīṣa's position, that he always sought guidance from the Vaishnava Brahmanas about how to rule the world. And that's part of being the king, right? His duty towards Krishna as a king was to engage all the citizens in Krishna's service, engage them properly. He saw to it that sacrifices were done properly and timely. He saw to it that the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas were given proper charity. He saw to it that the citizens were properly engaged in their varnashram duties. He saw it that they weren't just focusing on varnashram for the sake of varnashram, but actually they were engaged in devotional service also, chanting and hearing about the Lord. So much so that we read how none of the citizens aspired for the heavenly planets. They only ever wanted devotional service. All of the opulence of the heavenly kingdom meant nothing to them. It was just a waste if they couldn't do devotional service. That's the quality of Maharaj Ambarīṣa's rule, that all the citizens felt like this. And he had a wife, he had kids also, but he wasn't attached, because he understood that a devotee accepts that which is favorable to Krishna's service and rejects that which is unfavorable, but all the time being unattached, right, or detached from everything. In the purport of one of the verses, Srila Prabhupada actually says, quote, "Everything can be used to the extent that it can be engaged in Krishna's service," unquote. So the fact that Maharaj Ambarīṣa was a king, the fact that he had a wife, he had children, he utilized it all perfectly to serve. So as devotees living in the material world, sometimes you'll think, oh, if only I didn't have my family. If only I chose not to get married, I came to Krishna consciousness at the age of 40 and I got married at the age of 20. I wasted 20 years of my life in my marriage. But actually, okay, maybe the family isn't Krishna conscious. But can we engage the family in some service? Develop sukriti for them? Somehow? Right? We can see our duties towards the family as service, while continuing our prime service to Krishna. Chanting, hearing, reading, temple services, or congregation services. And seeing this one-pointed focus of Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, where everything he did was for Krishna, what did the Lord do? The Lord came and said, here's my Sudarshan Chakra. I'll give you this Sudarshan Chakra for your protection. We know in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna Name Bhakta Pranashyati, right? My devotees will never perish. And just to prove that, Krishna here is giving his dearmost devotee, Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, his Sudarshan Chakra, his most powerful weapon to protect Ambarīṣa Mahārāja. And now he's got the weapon. Now we've heard and seen about his glories. Now this is where the real rasa starts in the pastime. Right? So as devotees know on this call, one of the austerities we perform is, as devotees, is Ekadashi. Right? For many it's an austerity because many devotees love their prasadam service, honoring the prasadam service. Maybe not cooking the bhoga, but when it comes to honoring the prasadam, that's a service everybody is willing to do. You see maybe 10 or so devotees in the kitchen preparing the bhoga, right, to do the bhoga service of preparing the bhoga, but you see thousands coming for the prasadam honoring service, right? And Maharaj Ambarīṣa also decided to do that Ekadashi one day. Well, not one day, but yeah, on this occasion we're hearing about one day. So Ekadashi actually, since Ekadashi is coming up, Ekadashi is actually a 3-day fast, which we see in this pastime also. Because it actually starts on the wind down on the day before, and then the full proper fasting on the day, and then the break fast the next day. It's actually a 3-day fast, if you do it properly. Which, yeah, within ISKCON, I don't know if many devotees do. I know those who are very pakka in their austerities in the Ekadashi, they do this. And on this occasion, Maharaj Ambarīṣa and his wife are performing this Ekadashi fast, and they on the Dvadasi, they're getting ready to break the fast. But there's a proper etiquette, there's a proper standard to follow if you're doing it, shastrically speaking. It involves worshipping Lord Hari, then offering charity, inviting brahmanas home to honor a feast before we break our fast. And so in this way, normally it's feast on Dvadashi, yeah? And in this way, Ambarīṣa Mahārāja was doing his Ekadashi service properly, with following the proper standards. He invited the brahmanas home to honor prasadam, honor the feast. And then he was getting ready to break his fast. Now he's performed his service, he's performed Ekadashi very nicely, now it's ready for him to break his fast. But who turns up? Durvāsā Muni. Now I'm sure every devotee on this call has heard of Durvāsā Muni before, so I'm not going to give an introduction to his personality. But if you haven't, then just know this much, that there's a pastime where Durvāsā Muni had one day come to, I don't know if it was Barsana or Raval, but it was at least one of the places that Radharani was staying. And nobody was willing to take the service of cooking for Durvāsā Muni because they were scared. And I'm going to just share that, not share the rest of the pastime, but just think of Durvāsā Muni's personality when nobody was willing to cook for him because they were scared. Not because they couldn't, but because they were scared of cooking for Durvāsā Muni. Right, so this personality is turned up on Ambarīṣa Mahārāja's door now. When Ambarīṣa Mahārāja was ready to break his fast. So what does he do? He follows his proper etiquettes again. He continues to go, okay, Atithis come home. Atithi is a Brahmana also. Atitha Deva Bhava, right? Let me serve the Atithi. And part of that was, okay, let me, sage Durvāsā Muni, please honor some prasadam. Please eat. And Durvāsā Muni accepted. But he also followed his standards. His standard was that before he honors prasadam, because it's prasadam, it is non-different to Krishna. So he went, okay, scripturally I should cleanse myself. So he went to the river to take a bath. But here we have Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, whose the clock is ticking, right? We know all of us, since we practice Ekadashi fasting at least, we know that there's a specific time window to break the fast. Right? And if we don't break it during that time window, it's classified as not doing the Ekadashi properly. And in fact, in some places it's also mentioned that we get reactions for that. So here was Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, and it's described that one murat was left. One murat is around 48 minutes. 48 minutes was left of that murat, of that time window for him to break the fast. But the Durvāsā Muni's come, he's gone to take a bath. By the time he comes back, it'll probably be 10-15 minutes. By the time he gets sat down, maybe another 10-15 minutes. Then he'll honor, another half an hour gone. And then obviously you can't just go, Durvāsā Muni, you've honored now let me quickly honor. No, etiquette is that, you honor once they leave. Maybe he'll stick around for a bit. So he would miss his chance. So Ambarīṣa Mahārāja was in this dilemma. He was thinking, okay, well, what do? I need to break my fast, but at the same time, I need to honor the fact that I've got a Brahmana who's come home. I can't honor Prasadam before the Brahmana. It's not etiquette. So he consults the Brahmana Vaishnavas. He goes, what do? And collectively they go, okay, you can drink water. Nirjala Ekadashi is coming up, but Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, I actually don't know if it was Nirjala Ekadashi, but knowing Maharaj Ambarīṣa's dedication to Krishna, he would have done Nirjala Ekadashi every Ekadashi, So drinking water is an interesting thing because Shastrically speaking, you could, and it's mentioned also in this chapter actually, you could define it as breaking a fast and also not breaking a fast. And so in this way, the Brahmanas and Ambarīṣa Mahārāja decided, you know what, we can make it work. Okay, you can just sip a drink of water, and then from Ekadashi perspective, you fulfilled the vow, and from the Durvāsā Muni's perspective, you've also fulfilled the etiquette of not honoring Prasadam before him. So he drank. And then the Durvāsā Muni returned. And he's a great mystic yogi. He knows past, present, future. He can see what's happened. And he goes, you drank water. And Durvāsā Muni starts chastising Ambarīṣa Mahārāja. He starts claiming that Ambarīṣa Mahārāja is full of ego. He pretends to be a devotee, he pretends to be a great king, but look at him. He even describes dharma vyatikramam. He says that Ambarīṣa Mahārāja has transgressed the laws of religion. And to punish Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, he manifests a demon by ripping a hair out of his head. We see this also with Shiva and Daksha in that pastime, where Shiva rips out a hair from his head and manifests a demon. And in this case, the demon is a very fiery demon, right? Who's ready to just chase Ambarīṣa Mahārāja and kill him. And what does Ambarīṣa Mahārāja do? It's described, na chachala padan nipa. Ambarīṣa Mahārāja did not even flinch from his position. Just think, a demon has been manifested to kill Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, and Ambarīṣa Mahārāja doesn't even flinch. He doesn't even move a muscle. How could Ambarīṣa Mahārāja do that? I mean, we can see, like, when it's pitch black at night and we see a shadow move in the darkness, so many people get frightened. So many people, oh my God, what's happening? Or if we have children or younger brothers, siblings, etc., and you're playing with them at night and they just jump out and scream at you, we get frightened. But here's Maharaj Ambarīṣa facing death, an actual demon to kill him, and he doesn't even flinch. And that's because for Maharaj Ambarīṣa, being a pure devotee, his sole focus was on serving Krishna, even in that. In Canto 6, there's a very nice 2 lines. Narayana para sarve na kataschana bhipyati. Translation is, devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, never fear any condition of life. I repeat, devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, never fear any condition of life. And that's Canto 6, Chapter 17, verse 28. So pure devotees are so fixed up that their material condition means practically nothing to them. Right? Material vessels don't affect them. They tolerate everything because for them, they just see, okay, what's my service? And we see also in the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj, so much torture was taking place on him, right, from his father. Did he run around going like, no, these elephants are going to trample me? No, he just stayed dhira. He stayed still. He was just happily chanting and meditating on Vishnu. Because for him, that meditation, that service to Krishna, to Vishnu, to the Lord, was everything. And if as part of that, it meant that he loses his material body, so be it. But he was fixed up. And we see that as we advance in Krishna consciousness, we also get deep realizations on this. Because then we also start becoming less affected by fearful situations, by the material dangers that we have around us. We start, our vision starts to transcend the material calamities around us. So what to speak of somebody who is fully focused on Krishna? But then we can reflect also in our conditioned state, wherever we're at in our Krishna consciousness. If we're spiritually immature or spiritually weak right now, then what will tend to happen? We'll start taking shelter in things which are part of the material energy of the Lord. When reversals happen, we might start going to things that are of a non-Krishna conscious or non-internal energy nature. And for different people, that will be different things. So we can assess, okay, how surrendered am I to Krishna's plan? How much am I focused on Krishna? And how deep is my bhajan on Krishna? Because to the depth that our Krishna conscious bhajan is, to that depth, our consciousness will be transcending the material calamities around us. Whether it's from external sources, other living entities, whether it's from our own body, whether it's from natural calamities. And as devotees, because we understand that, okay, Krishna is that source which frees us from all fear, is Abhayankar. He frees us from all fear. We can think, okay, today I'm conditioned and I take shelter in gossiping with my friends. I take shelter of watching Netflix on the TV. Today I take shelter in binging on food. We can make a conscious effort to try and switch that to be something aligned to Krishna consciousness at least. Try to do something which will bring us closer to Krishna in that moment of shelter and surrender. Because isn't Krishna consciousness a process where we want to develop a surrender and service? So yeah, that's what we can think of. Right? That's what we can meditate on as well as part of this pastime, is Ambarīṣa Mahārāja's surrender to Krishna, to the Lord, was so much that death was facing him in the face. But he was solely focused on just taking shelter and serving Krishna. And what happened? The Sudarshan Chakra then comes to protect Ambarīṣa Mahārāja. Right? That Sudarshan Chakra that Krishna had given. Binge on Krishna Katha, yes. Sudarshan Chakra, given by the Lord, came to protect. What is our Sudarshan Chakra? One answer is Krishna Katha. The other answer is the holy name. We've got so many Sudarshan Chakras surrounding us. Association of devotees. The Bhagavatam. The Bhagavad Gita. The deities that we serve at home or in the temple. All of this can protect us from the material calamities, the material mindset, the anxieties that we go through. And that's what the Sudarshan Chakra did for Ambarīṣa Mahārāja. Sudarshan Chakra first cut through and burnt that fiery demon. And then it started to chase Durvāsā Muni. And what did Durvāsā Muni do? Right? Unlike Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, who was a pure devotee, Durvāsā Muni was a great, powerful yogi and mystic, right? He was a jnani as well. He had so much austerity, so much opulence behind him. But he starts running here and there and everywhere to save himself. I mean, isn't that what we would do? If somebody was coming at us with a vendetta, like with a knife or whatever, trying to kill us, we'd be running for our life because we're not surrendered to Krishna. So we just run. We just run as fast as we can. And that's what Durvāsā Muni was doing. But isn't that running part of our fear? I mean, I'm not saying that if somebody's coming with coming to kill you, that you don't run. No, but if you're at that level where you're fully focused on, okay, what is Krishna's plan? That's the only thing that matters. Then yeah, you may decide that, okay, the plan means I don't run. We should protect ourselves, yes. So I'm not saying this to say, okay, the next time, if anything like this, Krishna willing, doesn't happen, but if anything like this happens, then we don't protect ourselves. But the Durvāsā Muni's position was, he was running because he had no Krishna consciousness, actually. For him, his Krishna consciousness was his own strength, his own bal, his own gyan, his own austerities that he's performed, the tapasya and everything that he's done. That was where he placed his faith. That was where he placed his surrender. That nothing else, nobody else can help, but this will help. But like I said, Krishna is known as Abhayankar, right? The remover of fear. So when Krishna is sitting in the heart of a devotee, when we as devotees or aspiring devotees, we give the rein of our life to Krishna, then we're fearless. Because we know that the perfect chariot driver is driving our life. But here's Durvāsā Muni, who didn't want to give the reins to Krishna, despite all that knowledge he's acquired. He wanted firm handle on the reins. And so he was full of fear. And we, at least I speak for myself, fall in the middle somewhere. Where we've come to Krishna consciousness, we're saying we want to give our reins over to Krishna, let him drive our life. But here and there we take control because we think, okay, Krishna doesn't really have hold of it. And so the Durvāsā Muni is running everywhere because he's full of fear. But when he realizes that his own strength, what he thinks isn't helping, he decides, okay, let me go take the shelter of a senior personality. So he goes to Brahma first. And Brahma says, I can't help you. The Sudarshan Chakra that's chasing you belongs to Lord Vishnu. And personalities like myself, like Lord Shiva, like the other great sages, we all surrender and bow down to that Vishnu. And so hearing this, Durvāsā Muni then goes, okay, Brahma, you can't help me. Let me go to Shiva. Surely Shambhu, who drank the poison for the whole creation, will help me. Right? I'm not asking him to drink poison. I'm just asking him to save me from this Sudarshan Chakra. Surely he'll do that. And what does Shiva say? Shiva says something very similar to Brahma. I cannot compete with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under whose direction countless of universes come into existence and get annihilated. Sometimes there's the pastime. I've not really seen any Shastric evidence for it, but I'm sure there is somewhere. But sometimes we hear that Shiva is the one that gave Vishnu the Sudarshan Chakra. And so the people who usually share that usually say that Sudarshan Chakra, the most powerful weapon of Vishnu, belongs to Shiva. But here is Shiva saying that he can't protect Durvāsā Muni from a weapon that, according to that sort of explanation, belongs to Shiva himself. He can't control his own weapon. But Shiva's going a step further and saying that I can't even compete with Lord Vishnu, the one who gave Ambarīṣa Mahārāja the weapon. Rakhe Krishna mare koi, mare Krishna rakhe koi. Right? It's a bit off topic, but it's interesting actually. Before I came to Krishna consciousness and I would read up on different scriptures and stuff, actually Sikhism has a very similar saying also. Trying to remember it now. I know I can't remember it, but it's a very similar saying.
Prabhuji, is it Jako Rakhe Saiya Marsake na koi?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And then there's a second part too also, which I never remember. But yeah, it's interesting, right? Because we all have the same thing. If somebody is out to kill Krishna, but Krishna's ready to protect him, who can kill that person? But if Krishna himself comes down to kill somebody, who can save that person? And that's what Shiva, Brahma basically indicated to the Durvāsā Muni, that look, you set out to kill Ambarīṣa Mahārāja and Krishna set out to protect Ambarīṣa Mahārāja. Rakhe Krishna mareke. You couldn't kill him. And now Krishna, through his Sudarshan Chakra, is coming after you to kill you. Who is going to be able to protect you? Mare Krishna rakhe. So here's Durvāsā Muni with all his years of penance, with all his years of austerity, with all his cultivation of mystic and Jnana Yoga. Completely fruitless. Here's him seeking shelter of Lord Brahma. Here's him seeking shelter of Lord Shiva. Here's him at the start seeking shelter of Mount Sumeru, a cave in the mountain. Fruitless. But Shiva gives him one suggestion. Go and seek shelter of Lord Vishnu. Haristesham vidashyati. Lord Hari will certainly be kind enough to bestow all good fortune on you. Implying that Lord Hari will protect you. If you go to him, he will protect you. So now the Durvāsā Muni has no choice. He's tried Brahma, he's tried Shiva. Now he has to go to Vaikuntha, go to Vishnu. And we see that the Durvāsā Muni actually at least presents himself in a very humble way. He starts repenting because he's realized his mistake. He's realized that he's committed such a big offense. I did this to a devotee of yours. And so as he's repenting, he's then asking for that shelter. He's then seeking for the Lord's protection. And now what does the Lord reply? Yes, I will give you all protection. No. He goes, Aham bhakta paradhino hyasvatantra iva dvija sadhubhe grasta hrittayo bhakter bhakta jana priya. This is verse 63, a very beautiful verse. One that we can actually try to memorize also because it's very applicable. Canto 9, chapter 4. So the chapter that we're reading, verse 63. Translation. I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent. Because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires, I sit only within the cause of their hearts. What to speak of my devotees? Even those who are devotees of my devotees are very dear to me. Such a beautiful and packed verse actually for a devotee. And I think this is the Supreme Lord we're talking about. Okay? He cannot come under the control of great yogis or mystics. He's not attracted by Jnana or Vairagya. He's the proprietor, the controller of all the three worlds, of all the unlimited cosmic creations. And he is saying here, Ham Bhakta Paradhino. He's completely under the control of his devotees. Somebody who controls everything in existence, and even that which is non-existent, is saying that he's not in control. And then he also goes on to say that he doesn't even want to experience transcendental bliss or opulence without his devotees. Without us, he doesn't want to experience that bliss, that opulence that he lives in. On one side, we know the Lord is also Om Purnam, perfectly complete, perfectly self-sufficient. And he's saying that he doesn't want to experience any of this without us, without the devotees. And he says that he can't give up the association of his devotees because they gave up everything for him. He's become attached to the devotees. But we know that the Lord is full of 6 opulences, right? And what is one of those opulences? Renunciation. But he can't renounce his devotees. So how can we reconcile this? The Lord is all-powerful and yet he's controlled. The Lord is completely self-sufficient and yet he doesn't want to experience, or he can't experience any bliss without other people. The Lord is full of renunciation and yet he can't give up his attachment to his devotees. How do we reconcile this? So the Lord reconciles it for us in verse 66. He says, just as a chaste woman brings their gentle husband under control by service, his pure devotees who are nirbadha hridaya, right, who are completely attached to him in the core of the heart, bring him under their full control. The pure devotees have no desire other than to please the Lord. Right? Now imagine if there was somebody in your life, okay, who was completely dedicated to serving you. They didn't want anything in return. They just completely dedicated themselves to serving you. Whether heaven or hell, whether rain or shine, whether they get praised for it or abused for it, whether they're in, a fighting fit situation or whether they're in constant anxiety and pain, whether they have that $1 million penthouse or Avilas or whatever Ambani's tower is called, or whether they're trying to find a spot on the street to sleep. Imagine if they were just one-pointed that. It doesn't matter what my situation is. I just want to serve you, Gauri Mataji. I just want to serve you, Seema Mataji. I just want to serve you, Vijayanti Mataji. Right? Nothing else. I just want to dedicate my life to serving you. For your pleasure, not for my desire, not because I want something from it, but I just want to dedicate myself completely serving you. Imagine if that person's every breath was only taken if they were serving you with that breath. And if at some point that person comes up to you and goes, please do this thing. Just please, can you do this? Would we stop and think? At least I speak for myself. I'd be like, this person is so sold out to me. I just want to do what I can to reciprocate. I just want to give back. So if they've asked for this, here, take it. This is the least I can do to return what you've done for me, what you're doing for me. Out of that sheer love, they've controlled us in that situation. Because they've done so much without wanting anything in return. And then that one thing they've asked for, and usually it's not even for themselves, it'll be for somebody else. Because they're desireless. They don't want anything. They're just serving to please and love us. Right? Or if we take it to transcendental realm, to love Krishna. And now imagine that there's a second person who is completely dedicated to serving the one who's serving you in that mood. Imagine if they have the mood of service towards the person who has this mood of service to you. how much more would we love that person? How much more would we be sold out to that person? Because we're thinking, I'm not able to repay my debts to this person because I can't fully focus on giving myself to this person. But you've come and given yourself to that person. You're repaying debts on my behalf. How much more dearer would that person be? Because on the one side, this person is making us indebted, and so we become indebted to them. But on the other side, this devotee of the devotee is clearing the debt to this great personality on the Lord's behalf. And so now this devotee of the devotee is so much more precious to the Lord. And that's actually why Krishna loves when we're the servant of the servant of the servant. One of the reasons. Because the Lord's servant is sold out to the Lord, and the Lord is becoming indebted to that person. But the servant of that servant of the Lord is in one way reducing the debt by serving. But now we become indebted to that person. Now the Lord's become indebted to that person. But the Lord's getting relief from the debt to the Lord's servant. So we can see that what Lord Vishnu has basically established here through Ambarīṣa Mahārāja and through Durvāsā Muni actually, is that Durvāsā Muni, all your vairagya, all your renunciation, all your jnana, all your tapasya, everything you've done will not be useful for you in the long run. But you can go to great personalities like Brahma, like Lord Shiva. But if you're committing an offense against a devotee, even they won't be able to save you. And they will take you, okay, go to Vishnu, go to the source of where the Sudarshan Chakra has come from. But you've offended my devotee. You've done something wrong against my devotee. Even I can't protect you, because ultimately I'm controlled by my devotees. If you want me to do something, if you want Sudarshan Chakra to stop chasing you, I'm in no position to stop it, because I'm sold out to protecting my devotee Ambarīṣa Mahārāja. Only if Ambarīṣa Mahārāja is willing to save you will you be saved. And so then Lord Vishnu sends Durvāsā Muni to Ambarīṣa Mahārāja. Because only the devotees can change the mind of the Lord. The pure devotees can change the mind of the Lord. And who is a pure devotee? A pure devotee is not just one who is pure in their service to Krishna. A pure devotee is one who is pure in their service to Krishna through their service to their guru, to their senior. Because, as is described, Bhakta Janapriya, right? A devotee of the devotee is extremely, unlimitedly, extremely dear to the Lord. So I shall end there. 5:10. I see there's a verse in chat. I'm not a Brahmana, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya or a Shudra, nor am I a Brahmachari, a householder, Varnaprastha sannyasi. I identify myself only as the servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. He is like an ocean of nectar, and he is the cause of universal transcendental bliss. He is always existing with brilliance. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 1380. Thank you for sharing that, Rachna Mataji. But yes, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shubhapad ki jai. Comments? No questions? Comments? comments, corrections, reflections? Rachna Mataji.
Yeah, I just noticed that in one of the verses it said, in the desert, there is a river Saraswati. What is that? In one of the verses early on, it said something about
in desert countries.
Yeah,
So
where's the river Saraswati?
Yeah, so this isn't talking about a desert, it's talking about deserted countries.
Oh, deserted country. Oh, okay,
sure.
okay. But again, what does that mean? Like,
so it's more of like, I mean, it is desert, but it's basically where there's no population also. Yeah. So even even in places, so this is verse 22, right? So in desert countries or desert countries where there flowed the river Saraswati, Mahārāja Ambarīṣa performed great sacrifices like the Ashwamedha Yagna, etc. So where there's no opulence, where there's no people, where there's nothing, basically, right? That's basically what a desert is, right? Where there's nothing. I mean, we understand deserts as pure sand and, you know, reti, etc., like a lot of Maharashtra and stuff. But where there's nothing there, that's where Mahārāja Ambarīṣa was performing a lot of yagnas. Because the thing with yagnas, especially Ashwamedha Yagna, is that it's building up opulence, right? It's building up a situation to be situated on that place, in that land.
okay,
so I don't know if that
why does it say float the river Saraswati? I mean, what does that mean? Like Saraswati, what is that connection?
So naturally, yagnas would be performed where there's some holy land also. So that's the only connection I can think of, to be honest. I don't know, like, shastrically what the answer is for this verse specifically. But yeah, naturally, yagnas and any austerities or tapasya is performed where there's some holy land, right? Which is why we see like a lot of the demons would go to Kailash or Mount Sumeru or whatever, right? Where there's a lot of holiness. In this case, the desert countries or the desert countries, whichever way, so the implication is, you can perform yagnas there, but the fact that Saraswati is there makes it bona fide because then you've got the holy river there. So that's the only explanation I can kind of give. I don't know if devotees on the call have a better understanding of the austerities behind that, or the sacrifices rather.
I guess it maybe means that at that time all land was auspicious and pious and holy because of the presence of Mahārāja Ambarīṣa. Like, even they are saying that even the desert countries were considered pious then at that time.
No, so if you read it as a sentence, the way I read it at least is, in desert countries where there flowed the river Saraswati, Mahārāja Ambarīṣa performed great sacrifices like the Ashwamedha Yagna. So the way I'm reading it personally is that this is where Mahārāja Ambarīṣa performed his yagnas.
Okay, fine.
That's the way I'm reading it at least, yeah.
Prabhuji, have they observed the fast for one whole year? Because it is mentioned here that Dwadashi for 1 year.
Yeah, so without knowing the cosmological sort of understanding of the timelines of Mahārāja Ambarīṣa's period, the way I personally read it is that he was practicing Ekadashi for a whole year, in the sense that he was observing the fortnightly Ekadashis. But on this specific occasion, he was looking at the Durvāsā, and this is where the pastime takes place, on this specific occasion. Because Ekadashi is one day, one of the lunar days, right? So observing it for a whole year, when our Vedic cosmology accounts for lunar cycles, wouldn't make sense. But when we say that we're performing a vow, like we see also in modern days, like even those who aren't Krishna conscious, like if they're Hindu or pious, they'll say, okay, I'm going to perform this vrat for a month, right? I'm going to give up chocolate for a month or something as part of my vrat, like a vow that I've taken. Like I know, for example, people will give up certain things because they have a manyata, or like they have a belief in Krishna or Bhagwan will do something if they give, and they're going to give this up to try and make it happen. Or if Bhagwan has done something, then they go, okay, I promised I'd do this. So that's the way I take it. It's the vow was a year vow that, okay, we're not going to break Ekadashi for this whole year. Every Ekadashi we're going to properly fulfill it. Whereas what happens with us, sometimes we'll say, okay, yep, I'm going to do this Ekadashi today. And then the next Ekadashi comes and we're like, okay, I'll try and do it. But here Mahārāja Ambarīṣa's mood was that I'm going to make sure I do Ekadashi properly for this whole year. Because sometimes it happens that we break it, right?
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
I missed the class, Prabhuji, really. I just saw one message and I kept my mobile somewhere. Really, I feel so bad. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, in one of the verses, it was mentioned that when Durvāsā Muni was praying, he was praying to Brahman. And like it's mentioned, his personality is that he's angered easily and he has a very bad temper. So we have seen in other instances also that a lot of rishis and munis who are either yogis or pray to the Brahman and have done a lot of tapasya and some kind of ritualistic, sacrifices. A lot of them have a very big component of ego. So does it reiterate to us that devotees who pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead are less prone to having that degree of inflated ego when compared to those rishi munis who might be doing a lot of tapasya and a lot of this thing, but they're doing it to become more powerful or to get some mystic powers? So do we have other instances? I'm not aware of devotees of the Lord, but I think of Lord Shiva. He's the devotee of the Lord, but he also gets angry. What do you think, Prabhuji?
Okay, nice question, Sarika Mataji. And you're speaking to one who is full of ego also.
We all are, aren't we?
But like you said, right, Gyan and tapasya, etc., brings its own sense of ego. So there are other cases, and like you mentioned, Lord Shiva. But see, with Shiva, the thing is that if you look at the pastimes of where Lord Shiva gets angry, he utilizes in service. Because arguably we could also say Hanuman got angry, which is why he burnt down Lanka, right? But why was he angry? It was because of the situation with Sita. But he utilized that anger because his mood was, how do I serve? And that's the difference between devotees who are mature as well. And even in devotee circles, you will see people who are not quite there yet, and they still have a lot of ego. I mean, I'm speaking for myself here also. There will be a lot of ego. There will be a lot of the pride, because you're right, that material intelligence, that material sort of opulence that we get from Gyan, from austerities, from Viragya, Tapasya, etc., does inflate our ego. Even as devotees, like you might have marked this within yourself, that when we come to Krishna consciousness, we've found something higher. So then our ego starts coming in. Oh, this, you're my husband and you're not practicing this? Look at me, I'm such a good devotee, right? I'm following properly. It happens because that's our ego coming in. But you're right, the more we serve and surrender to Krishna, the more that ego gets properly controlled. Because the thing is that when we look at our philosophy, das and das and das, how can a servant have ego, right? So when we're developing that mentality, then no matter how much ego we have, it can become so small. And then we have the real ego, which is Yes, I am somebody, but Krishna is so much bigger than that, than me. And so we properly actually situate ourselves. So even in our movement, we've got so many devotees that are, and I'm sure you can think of many also, that are so learned in Shastra, that are out there with millions of people, followers on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, etc., because they're sharing such nice Krishna Katha, whether it's direct Krishna Katha or indirect. Why are they not full of ego? Because they've properly situated themselves, which is why Krishna then gives them that ability to have such a big following also. Krishna will take away that which we aren't properly utilizing. So if we're immature in our Krishna consciousness, we've got all that ego, then we might be the most learned in Shastra, but Krishna won't give us a medium to be able to propagate that Shastra. Because Krishna recognizes, if I give you this now, your ego is going to get inflated. You're going to turn away from me. So instead, he doesn't give it. But once we become humble, then Krishna will give everything to us. Like Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, he was Pakka devotee. So he had control and ownership over the 7 worlds, but it didn't get to his ego, right? If we own a 3-bed apartment and we're going to somebody's house who only has a 2-bed apartment, come on, let's be honest. Our heads will be high, you know? Heads will be high. Oh, you know, I have this room. It's a spare bedroom right now, you know? So it happens. But yeah, the more we develop the mood, Radha Maharaj is completely sold out to this, that developing that mood of dasana, dasana, das. And you can see how big a sannyasi he is. Corporates come to him. Not many corporate businesses come to our sannyasis, actually. Radha Maharaj is one of the key ones that I know who is very big in the corporate world. Of course, his disciples also have things to do there, but they're attracting those because they have the true humility. So yes, Krishna, becoming a devotee, developing the mood of bhakti is definitely beneficial to curb that ego within us. But we also have to endeavor to developing that mood of dasana, dasana, das. And last thing I'll share on this is that actually this is one of the practices that brahmacharis especially follow, but as congregation devotees, we generally kind of don't do this because one thing is we probably don't even know about it. But in the brahmachari ashram, what would usually happen is the first thing you do when you wake up is you pay your obeisances. Get out of bed, pay obeisances to Guru, to Srila Prabhupada, to Krishna. Because what does paying obeisances do to us? It bows our head. It puts our head below the other personality. It puts our head at the feet of a personality. If we're full of ego, we want our heads above everybody else's head. But if we're full of humility, we realize that our head is best placed under the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas. Uddhava doesn't even want to be, sorry, not Uddhava, I forgot who the personality is now. I think it's CC, but yeah, there's a personality who doesn't even want to associate or doesn't even want to be an atom at the lotus feet of the personality, but he wants to be an atom at the lotus feet of the shoes of a personality. Or, for example, we have Uddhava, if I stick to verses that I do know. We have Uddhava who wants to be a blade of grass in Vrindavan. Because that's real humility. So yeah. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I just have a reflection on your class, which I learned 2 very good things. One is the explanation of how many Sudarshan chakras we have protecting us in the form of hearing the Krishna Katha and reading the Bhagavatam and deities and associates. So that's wonderful. And also the Dasanudas explanation you gave and how Krishna is sold out to the Dasanudas because he's kind of, getting rid of his debts to the actual Dasa. I didn't know that. That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Yes, reflections are nice. We either should have questions or we should have reflections and realizations. Otherwise, we've not heard properly. Because two things should happen. Either our heart should transform or we should have doubts. So.
Also, Prabhu, I like that. Don't brag about the extra bedroom.
Everything's coming out today, Vijayanti Mataji. Yes.
Prabhuji, whenever we say about the Shastras, we always refer to Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. Usually we not refer to Chaitanya Charitamritam. Why it is like that?
So devotees who know CC will reference the CC. But it depends on how knowledgeable you are. The thing is that a lot of devotees, myself included, will focus on Bhagavad Gita to create a firm understanding, a foundation on the philosophy. And then the Bhagavatam, because that's the next in line. CC, so the Bhagavad Gita are the words of Krishna, right? And then the Bhagavatam is the life, we could say it's the life of Krishna. But then the CC is the heart of Krishna, the dil. We can read through the CC, but reality is, how much are we absorbing in the CC? Because if we haven't properly understood who Krishna is, how can we appreciate Mahaprabhu's mood? How can we appreciate Advaita Acharya, who wants the Lord to come? I'll just call my parents. If I'm in trouble, I'll just call my parents. Why was it necessary for the Supreme Personality of Godhead to come? We won't understand. We can read Srila Prabhupada's words in the CC, and we should, right? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't read the CC. We should definitely read the CC. Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam CC, we should definitely read. Ideally in order. But if I don't have the understanding of the rasa behind the CC, then I can quote verses. Right? Jivara Svarupa Krishna Nityadas. There's a common one that everyone would have heard of, probably even know of. That comes from the CC. Right? There's so many other verses actually, but how much of a realization do we have on the CC? At least I speak for myself, not much, which is why I stick to Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. But yeah, then there's the rasa element of CC, because there's so much rasa in the CC, so much intimacy in the CC, that naturally you want to keep it for special cases, right? You don't reveal the pearl straight away. If somebody comes to your home, you don't go, here's the khazana, here's my almari, here's the code to the almari. This is where my gold is. This is how much gold I've got. No, you might do that to a close associate who you're comfortable with. So
actually, I think it would be probably too esoteric for the new audience. It would not. They would not even understand what they're reading.
Exactly, right? So you don't reveal the almari to somebody who's come to your house for the first time. But yeah, quoting verses from CC, we can do it. It's not that we shouldn't do it. We can do it. If it's relevant, we can do it. And we see Srila Prabhupada devotees, even myself, I've quoted a few CC verses before in classes. But yeah, it depends on the level of the devotee and their mood as well. Like my Guru Maharaj will often quote verses from the CC because that's where he really developed rasa in Krishna consciousness. So yeah. Yes, CC is popular with Gaudiya Vaishnavas, yes. So yeah, I guess a broad sense, if we're going out of ISKCON, then yeah, well, not just ISKCON, but outside of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's era, then yeah, of course, we'll see less emphasis on CC. But even then, there will be certain Vaishnavas who will also quote from Mahaprabhu and his life because they understand what it means to be a devotee. So yes. Jay, I'm conscious of time. I will put the question in chat, but there's no point answering it because Sarika Mataji made me answer it already. So the question I actually had, I only had one for today, which is what are the dangers of being too focused on tapa, which is austerities, or vidya, which is knowledge, and how can one counteract these dangers? So kind of already spoke about it anyway, so I'm not going to go through it, especially with time. But yeah, if maybe one more person wants to share anything, reflection, realization, or if you want to talk about the question, that'd be nice. I hope we know we heard from.
Prabhuji, too much of tapa will make us hard-hearted, like
That's true.
like how we are seeing in this pastimes, right? So I think that is, and also on the CC, it's a very nice observation, Prabhuji. I don't know, my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Jayapataks Maharaj, he constantly speaks on CC, so I'm slowly getting attracted to it. It's I think what we hear from the devotees more like if we sit and read it like Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, I don't think we'll get that the focus of CC. Certain things might even look weird, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leelas, but when it is spoken by really a devotee who has really, experienced it and living a life, it's wonderful to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, we see senior sannyasis, senior gurus will speak on CC, but we see that not many others will. Like, for example, at the manor, I don't know how it is depending on the temples, but at the manor, we have daily Srimad Bhagavatam classes, but then on the weekends we do CC classes, which is a bit weird. But we had just gone through the pastime of the conversation with, I'm always bad with personalities from the CC, but it's the esoteric pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu having a conversation and going something higher, like the devotee.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember.
Ramananda Raya.
Yes,
Ramananda
Ramananda Raya.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ramananda Raya.
And there it's like all the devotees who are speaking, they're second initiated. Yeah. At the manor, you have to be second initiated to speak on the CC in class. And these devotees, they're 20, 30 years into their Krishna consciousness. Some of them are Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's disciples, early disciples that will speak. Not many will speak on the CC. And they will start off by saying, especially with that conversation, I have no realization, I cannot say anything on this verse. And so they focus on a specific part of the verse, or sorry, not in the verse, the purport, that they can speak on. Because they can't speak on any of the esoteric stuff because they haven't, at least they say they haven't got any realization on it. But they will pick out something which is philosophical, which is indicating a mood of Mahaprabhu, or something like that, something which isn't so as esoteric as this whole hierarchy is, or the descriptions. So yes, Ima Mataji, who am I to speak on the CC when I've, only a couple of years in, not even a properly practicing devotee. So it's like I'm on the journey, but yeah. See, I don't even remember personalities from the CC. You see, like how would I ever give verses or speak on the CC?
You're so humble, Prabhuji.
That's not humility. That's just bad. Just bad.
No, Prabhuji, as you said, that certain, but some parts of CC, like like the dealings of the Vaishnavas, those things are really inspiring.
Yeah.
Like how the devotees coming from Bengal, I forgot his name also. So Shivananda, I don't know if I wrote wrongly. So he brings all the devotees. He brings a dog with him. So even how they treat this. This is very inspiring. That makes us to feel at least hope that we will attain that level of humility and service attitude. It's something it's very, very sweet actually. The dealings are very sweet in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yes. And that's how you know the CC is bona fide, because in India you find dogs everywhere. So dogs come for Krishna Katha.
Yeah.
In that pastime.
Yeah.
So it's a learning. We know it's from India. right? If there's any doubt that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, like, oftentimes we will see Jesus, oh, he didn't come from here, came from here. He went to India, he didn't go to India. But we know, fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is from India because there's a dog involved. No, I'm joking. But yeah.
Like some of my, I mean, as we were discussing previously, when I used to hear CC, I used to feel, not that much thing. A couple of years ago, there was during the COVID time, during Chaitanya, when Mahaprabhu's appearance day, so they had the series of talks on CC. Like I think even from Atlanta, they had like an hour of session each day. So because it was locked down, so I was hearing that. And so once you keep hearing, then it's just more, you become like, you start liking it. I mean, it's not liking, disliking. I mean that, how to say that, taste. Little taste, not too much. It was nice.
Yeah.
Prabhu, I read CC just once from beginning to end, and I can tell you it was the most torturous experience of my life. I had the hardest time because it was so difficult. For some reason, it is not, I'm not there, so I was just not getting it, So I'm very comfortable still with Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. I'm not at all comfortable with CC at all.
Yeah, without understanding who Krishna is from the Bhagavatam, we can never understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's position. But without understanding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's position, we can never understand Krishna. We can never appreciate Krishna fully. So what mess did we get ourselves into, devotees? Without Krishna, we can't understand Mahaprabhu. Without Mahaprabhu, we can't understand Krishna. So how do we do this? Just become das.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's why I brought up that verse, because I don't know verses from CC. I just use the das anu das. That thing made me bring it up. Yeah.
That's nice. But no, that's really what it is. Without Krishna, we can't understand Mahaprabhu. Without Mahaprabhu, we can't understand Krishna. Without both, we can't understand Guru Tattva. Without Guru Tattva, we can't understand Krishna or Mahaprabhu. But if we just develop the service mood, being dasanu dasanu das, then everything gets revealed. But we have to have that nishta.
Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that dadami buddhi yogam tam. So if we have a sincere desire, so automatically he can help us to understand. Like before reading, like Bhagavad Gita, when I read it for the first time, I didn't even understood a word. Now I think I can better understand on the few of the verses. Same thing in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam also. Probably that can also help if we have a desire. I think.
Yeah, the desire, if the desire is in service mood, and that service mood is not just to Vaishnavas as people, but also to the Bhagavata as a Purusha, as well as Bhagavata as a literature. When we're reading the Bhagavatam or reading the Bhagavad Gita, we're not really reading it. We're meant to be serving the Bhagavatam. So if we have that sincere mood that I want to understanding it, come closer to Krishna, and we're serving the Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, so much more gets revealed to us. And that's where personalities like Jayapataka Maharaj, like Kadam Kanana Maharaj, and so many personalities get their rasa in CC, because they have served the CC. They have served Mahaprabhu's mission, which has opened the gates up to understanding, or the gates up to the pastime of Mahaprabhu. And then by sincerely serving Krishna through the Bhagavatam and Mahaprabhu through the CC, they've themselves entered the pastime. And I'm not speaking into the pastime in the sense that we always hear it, which is that Mahaprabhu's Leela is still going on, because this is the Sankirtan movement of Mahaprabhu. But I'm actually saying actually entered the pastime also. Their consciousness is in the pastime. So yeah. We are under Srila Prabhupada's.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I was just saying, because I was hearing one lecture where I was saying, like, without Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's no Radharani. So the worship of Radharani itself would be out, So this is something which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu established. So it's still more difficult for us to understand because Radha Tattva is also involved there. So
Yeah.
this is really wonderful realizations of many devotees.
So seek shelter, dear devotees. Seek shelter of the devotees.
Yeah.
Who have realized and become that Priya Bhakta, that Bhakta Priya Jana. Become that person who is serving Krishna with their life and soul, and you become the person who is serving them with your life and soul. And then Krishna will look at you. You've got no other way. So yeah. Okay, conscious of time. Thank you, dear devotees, for joining. Apologies for the confusion on the chat as well, because I know Satprim Prabhu had mentioned one thing and then I mentioned another, but yeah. Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.